Welcome to the Listen Up podcast, where we explore hearing loss, communication, connections, and health.
Hi, everybody. Dr. Mark Sims here. I'm the host of the Listen Up podcast. This might give you an idea who our special guest is today. Today, we have the Incredible Hulk. We have Lou Ferrigno. He is a bodybuilder, championship bodybuilder. He's also an actor, as you know, and he's also a hearing loss advocate because he has a cochlear implant. We're excited to have him on our show today, and we're going to talk to him about his hearing loss journey. Well, welcome, and thank you for coming on the podcast. Listen Up, Lou.
Thank you, Doc. My pleasure.
For everybody, this is Lou Ferrigno, and he doesn't need introduction. For me, he was the Incredible Hulk. I know he was a bodybuilder. He's a guy who suffers from hearing loss, and he's also a hearing loss advocate. So there are a lot of great things that he's doing. So Lou, can you tell the audience, when was the first time you realized you had hearing loss?
I think probably the age of maybe 2 or 3, I had a severe ear infection. I had what you call nerve damage. And I think my parents, they didn't notice anything. They clapped their hand. I might have been maybe the age of 4 years old. Then they took me to a doctor. I was diagnosed with 85% hearing loss, profound. And back then, this was like 1951. And hearing aids was not as popular back then because then once I was diagnosed, they gave me the old-fashioned hearing aid. You have to strap it around the chest with the box, and the wire goes like my favorite Martian, and then you have the button sticking out of the ear, which made me very self-conscious. And on top of that, I had a severe speech impediment. I had to go twice a week to the New York League for the Hard of Hearing to learn how to read lips. So for me, it was a lifelong battle because as a kid, I used to read a lot of comic books to escape the pain. Because, you know, my imagination, because not feeling sorry for myself. So it was tough because, especially once I wore the old-fashioned hearing aid, I think at about maybe the age of maybe 8 or 9, 10, maybe older, I started to wear the BTE. And I'm glad they told me back then, every 6 months, switch ears. Because if I haven't done it, this one ear would have completely rejected. So that's how I grew up with, and it's basically, I just had to labor with myself, especially when it came to school. It was hard to hear it because people didn't recognize hearing aids like the way they do it today, like glasses. So it was a tough ordeal for me.
Yeah, so was your hearing loss progressive? Did it get worse, or has it kind of stayed where it is?
It's gotten worse. My right ear did get worse the last 4 or 5 years because I'm 71 now. That's why I consider having a cochlear implant, because I've worn hearing aids, like for example, getting the most power I can get, give me volume. But then I was told I should get a cochlear implant. It scared me to death because, of course, you know, I was thinking that it was like a major surgery. But the thing is, I had a friend of mine who was a producer. He had perfect hearing. Over the years, he lost his hearing. His weight discrimination went down to 12%. He did a lot of research, and he had a cochlear implant, and his weight discrimination now is 96%.
It's awesome.
So this convinced me to do it.
And so is your word discrimination much better? So for the audience, that's your ability to understand words. So
definitely, especially the clarity for myself, for other people, because it affects my speech tremendously, because I had what you call monotone speech, but now I have added more inflection, especially now that I'll be able to hear the different S sound. I don't have to think about myself speaking. It's much more relaxed now, and I'm quicker for the response.
So were you educated in a traditional school, or did you go to school for hard of hearing?
I was in parochial school. And then...
Me too.
Right, but listen to this.
Yeah.
So the teacher said I should go to a puppet school. So they put me in a puppet school. And one time the teacher was talking to me, I looked behind me. The teacher was talking to me. So this teacher said, listen, the teacher told my father, so listen, he needs not to be in puppet school. He needs to go to a private a tutor or something to read lips, and kind of an isolated situation. So back then I was forced to go back to class, back to parochial school. I had to sit in the front row, the front class, because I was hiding my hearing problem. So since then, I've been the first guy in the classroom right up front to the time I graduated.
Well, I think that actually probably helped you with the teachers. They like people to sit up front, right?
Yeah, but the harder thing for me with the teacher would teach, they would turn the back
to the board,
towards the blackboard. Right. But now, recently, in the past, when I went to training for the sheriff department, I said to the teacher, listen, face me, don't face the blackboard, because if I don't take action, it can affect me. So they were open to it. But back then, when I was young as a kid, I mean, I didn't have the self-esteem to do it.
Yeah. Well, that actually leads me to the question: how did you get into weightlifting and bodybuilding?
Well, when I was very young, I used to read a lot of the comic books, like I mentioned, and I'd go to a comic book store to trade comics. So I was looking at the top shelf. I see this blonde-haired guy with a blonde hair. His name was Dave Draper, doing the chest pose. I said, Mr. America. I used to watch Miss Universe on TV.
Sure.
The female competition, but I never realized they had a male competition, Miss Universe. So I took the magazine home. I read it from page to page. It was like a drug to me because I was very addicted to power. And because a friend of mine down the street had weights, so that's how it all began. I started to buy more Muscle magazine weights because I wanted to build a powerful body because I felt like this would be my antidote to defend myself. I was bullied as a kid. So that was, it's amazing. I was drawn to it. I can't explain it. It's like it just became my passion.
Right, and you competed on an international level, correct?
Yeah, I won Teenage America, Miss International, Mr. World, all the competitions running up to Schwarzenegger with the pumping iron. And that changed my life. And then I decided with the discipline from bodybuilding, let me try to go in the show business. So one thing led to another.
You're very good at anticipating my questions. Because
Yes.
The next question is, how are you going to become the Incredible Hulk, right? So you transitioned from bodybuilding to showbiz. How did that go?
Well, what happened though, I went to California to train for the 1976 Metro Olympia competition. 6 weeks before I received a phone call, they said they have an audition for the Hulk. I couldn't believe it. I said to myself, let's give it a shot. I went down for the screen test. I wasn't very happy because they had to paint me green, of course. I do all the animalistic moves and then just convince them. I really wanted to play the Hulk. But the big question was that I had to give up the title to win 76 to the series instead. I said, okay. So that's how it all began.
What's your favorite episode from the Hulk?
The one I play myself called King of the Beach, where I work in a restaurant and I compete in the bodybuilding competition and I meet the Hulk, me and the Hulk together for the first time on the screen.
That's great. And besides the Incredible Hulk, who's your favorite superhero and why?
Sean Connery, James Bond.
James Bond. Yeah, that's a good. Why do you like James Bond?
Because I wanted to be like him, suave, handsome, women, the way he walked, intelligent, spy. But before that, my other superhero was Superman. As a kid, I used to come home religiously from school to watch the Superman series every day with George Reeves. Mm-hmm. Because, when you were young as a kid, you really believed Superman's real. So it was an escape for me. The Three Stooges, we only had a few stations back then in Brooklyn.
3. Yeah. Usually 3 or 4, right?
Right. The same thing when I did the series, 2, 4, and 7. Okay. Today you got streaming hundreds, yeah.
And if you could have another superpower, what would it be?
To read people's mind.
Wow, that's great. Why would you want that? I mean, I know kind of, but. Exactly. And so, what do you consider your own superpower now as Lou Ferrigno, not as the Hulk?
My intuition of people.
Oh, really? So how does that manifest itself?
I have a great sense of people, meaning that when I meet people, talk to people, I have a great intuition. I can see behind their defense.
Oh, that's great.
Just seriously, yeah.
Yeah, that's a really powerful.
Yeah, because and also I have a stronger sense of smell. When you have a hearing loss, you have a greater sense of smell and touch and feel. So for me, those two qualities because of my hearing loss.
So I assume food and those types of things are nice for you, because
especially BO. I can't stand BO. I can smell BO 2 miles away.
Wow, that's funny because you're in the weightlifting business.
I know, especially in the gym sometimes. Some guys don't take a shower and the t-shirt, it smells like the worst than the Hudson River.
Worse than the Hudson River, that's pretty bad. So one of the things I love about like the Incredible Hulk and the superheroes is they have human flaws, even though they're superheroes, right? And so what do you think about those two things? That, he was angry, that always made him have the power.
Well, the thing is, every one of us has a little Hulk inside of us. So he expresses how we feel, our anger. Like, for example, my favorite scene as the Hulk when Bill Bixby is in the phone booth trying to make a phone call. And the operator said 25 cents. He didn't have the money and he's making an emergency phone call. And he gets frustrated and he hangs up the phone and literally he obliterates the whole phone booth. He expands, the whole thing shatters to pieces. That's how we feel at times. Sometimes in traffic, sometimes we get angry, but the Hulk releases our demons inside of us, that frustration.
No, I think that's great. I mean,
that's why he's so popular.
Yeah, no, I mean, he was by far my favorite.
And it's the only superhero with no shirt on.
That's true. He doesn't have a costume as compared to all of the other, right? You don't have an H or anything like that, right? I'm sure you like that, right?
Of course.
What's your favorite piece of Hulk memorabilia that you have?
That I have now, I would say I have, believe it or not, I have the original nose piece and the forehead piece I wore in the series.
Okay.
It's nice to have that, but I keep it in a nice safe place that won't decay over the years.
Oh, that's great. And so, leaving the Incredible Hulk, Lou, like, what do you do for your free time? What's your hobbies?
I have a lot of hobbies. I love to make small furniture.
Oh, like what type of furniture?
Bookshelves, maybe I made two little cribs for my grandkids. I love to do woodworking because I stayed 4 years apprenticeship to be a sheet metal journeyman. And I've done carpentry. So I built myself a used shop. I like to be very therapeutic for me. I like to make things. I like to shoot guns, like air gun. I like to build. I like to have a game room. So I like to do different things to stimulate myself because I feel every day if I could do something that more educational for me, I have to learn something each day for my own intelligence, that makes me feel good. But more than anything, I love competing with myself.
So when you say that, can you expect when you competing by yourself in what ways? I mean, I think I know what you mean, but for the viewers, like what?
Me, for example, to summarize this, we all have our own personal power. All you can do is maximize your personal power. Me, for example, when you compete with other people, you lose. All you can do is be the best you can be and within your own capacity. Like, for example, if I'm going to compete against someone like Bruce Jenner, I can't because he's a phenomenal athlete. He can't compete with me because of my genetics being a world champion bodybuilder. You take President Clinton, he's a world scholar. Everybody's different. But for me, it's all about maximizing my own personal power. That's the most powerful thing you can give yourself.
So being the most of what you want to be.
Exactly.
That's great.
Like, for example, getting a cochlear implant. I want to have better hearing. For my whole life, I've been struggling with hearing. So this is an opportunity to improve my hearing. Why not? Exactly what I'm talking about. Make the best out of yourself.
That's great. That's great advice. So, what's your favorite place you ever went on vacation?
Rome, Italy.
Why is that?
Well, my family's from Amalfi. I just like the traditional, like Rome, especially the rooms, especially the food, the atmosphere, the environment, the people, the hospitality. I made 3 movies there. I made Hercules, sequel to Hercules, Sinbad.
Oh wow, that's great.
Yeah.
So leading into that, what's your favorite food?
Probably fish, penne pasta, wine. I'm a big wine drinker. Very simple. Because, my grandfather, they were bricklayers. Him and his 2 brothers, they were bricklayers. They came home, but they would sit down for lunch. They would have a pasta, Italian bread, and they would drink wine. Before going back to work, they would have like a triple espresso. That was their daily regimen, their routine. And you grow up with that. Like being Italian, you grow up with wine, pasta, you appreciate a good Italian food. Like Chinese people, they love Chinese food. It's a tradition.
No, that's wonderful. And so talking about your hearing loss, how would you say it impacted you favorably? I mean, we can talk about it unfavorably, but in terms of what has it done for you favorably?
If I haven't had a hearing loss, I would be not as successful as I am today.
Okay.
I probably would have been a typical, maybe a police officer, maybe like
a sheet metal worker.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, but I didn't want that. I wanted more than that because I knew that I didn't want to spend many years and wait to the age of 65, then retire. I wanted to do different things because I need to be more active. I can't go on a schedule of punching. That's me personally because I like to accomplish more in my life because I'm very driven.
Oh, that's great. And so in terms of your hearing loss, what different technologies did you use before cochlear implants? Hearing aids by and large?
Hearing aid, power, trouble with the telephone. Like now, because recently, the last 7, 8 years, because of the iPhone, now they have Bluetooth. Before they had Bluetooth, they had to get a little attachment you put on your phone to magnify the volume. And also, I was just telling this person, Kara, it's amazing that the new technology that years ago, if I had to do, for example, remote new interviews, I would have to look at a blank TV. Otherwise, the person, for example, say a newscaster on the East Coast, they can see me, but I can't see them. Right. So I had this little earpiece. I tried to tell them to raise the volume. I had trouble understanding the question. But now with the iPhone Bluetooth, I don't have to wear headphone, earpiece. I could just sit there, just look at them, and then listen to everything through my iPhone without having to wear any kind of attachment.
That's amazing. That's really wonderful. So you've kind of ridden all through, I mean, from body aids all the way to cochlear implants. I'm sure you've seen tons of versions of everything.
Oh, sure, over the years, yes. But I was amazed that when I've done a lot of Comic-Con conventions over the years, I would see people come to my table with a cochlear implant, and I was amazed at how well they conduct themselves, how well they're able to hear. And I was saying to myself, maybe I should be doing something like this.
Yeah, no, I think it's great. And so before you got a cochlear implant, what was your greatest fear?
10 years ago, someone told me if you get a cochlear implant, it would destroy the canal. You can never go back to a hearing aid. It was always that fear, what if, what if? But now basically because of being a candidate, the chances are phenomenal to have successful hearing. But before then, people don't know this. They think that because you're a doctor, you're taking a chance of a hit and miss with having surgery.
So I guess once you looked into it, you found out that it was pretty predictable and likely that you would do much better.
Yeah, I was nervous. I was scared to death. But of course, I said to myself, at the time I was like 69, I said to myself, I'm not going to wait till I'm 80, 85. I want better hearing. Because we're in a time now that we have hope and we have better hearing. This was like 50, 60 years ago. We didn't have this. Like people now have knees replaced, hip replaced. I have the same thing. We can be thick. 50, 60 years ago, people didn't have that. They resorted to alcohol, different things to eliminate the pain.
Yeah, no, that's great. And so once you got your implant, like what were some of the first sounds you heard that you realized you hadn't heard for forever?
They told me, they warned me before that you might hear some robotic like bell chiming and ringing. Some people hear words. So for me, coming from a profound hearing loss, I heard different high-pitched sound, not like the hearing aid. And I did an app, it's called the Angel app. There's 3 activation. So it's amazing. It was frustrating for me, but I had the attitude, you have to approach it like you're training for a better physique, like for competition. The more you work at it, the better you're going to hear. So it's like building hearing muscle.
Right.
So the more I did it, I was amazed how the brain started to formulate the words. At the beginning, I said to myself, wow, I mean, I hope it gets easier. Right. And after about 3 months, I mean, it was a significant improvement, phenomenal.
Yeah, I mean, I tell my patients they have to train and work at it. Would that be the advice you would give to them?
Yeah, they have what you call an Angel app. They give you 4 different words, and you got to pick the correct word.
So practicing.
Yeah, so the beginning for me was like maybe 40, 50%. It got to the point, got to 95, 97%. My favorite, they have an app now that you listen to a conversation, and they give you 3 questions. After you listen to the conversation, 3 questions, you have to answer specifically to the conversation. It had to do with maybe medicine, going, booking a room in a restaurant, driving instruction. So that's a challenge. And this is just with 1 ear.
Right, you only have 1 implant, correct?
Because my left ear is 115 decibel ear loss. My right ear is 110. So I have a hearing aid in this ear and implant on the left. And
you like that combination works for you?
I like to eventually do bilateral.
Okay, great. Yeah, so you can go and get a second one. For some people, that works for them, right? Mm-hmm. All right, great. And so kind of looking back now, cochlear implantation, and like when you were a teen, so what type of struggles did you have as a teen that, I mean, not just the part of being a teen, from a hearing point of view that you no longer have now, for instance, with a cochlear implant?
Or telephone. For example, the old payphone, I would have to hold the telephone behind the hearing aid to try to listen, especially that you're making a phone call from a phone booth under a train station. Hopeless. And also people with a different accent, hopeless. Also having a conversation, like for example, if I'm going to class and with a bunch of students, a friend of mine, every time I had to find the person speaking, I lose out on the next person having a conversation because of my whole time I'm trying to pinpoint who's talking first.
Right, to see their face.
Exactly. And that gets to be mind fatigue after a while. It's very dreary, and you get to a point that you sit back and just say, hey, I just want to
check out from the conversation. Yeah. And how about when you played the Hulk? Did your hearing loss cause any struggles in that respect?
It was tough because a lot of times out in the field when I'm filming, I had to make sure that they give me directions beforehand, because a lot of times I couldn't understand when the director was staying maybe 30 feet away. He'll have to come very close to me, because now when they direct movies, the screen, they're like maybe 20, 30 feet away. But what's interesting is that I filmed a horror movie last summer. So
is it out?
No, coming out. I'm going to finish filming in probably 2 weeks. That's why I'm growing the beard again. But over the summer, I was filming in Syracuse. I was on the set inside this house, my little cabin. And the director was about to say action. I'm sitting there, and I heard a crew member talking 30 feet away. And I said to the director, I can't film until this man stopped talking. But with the implant, I was able to hear that far. I was able to understand what he was saying far away, then have someone run to me every second, repeating to me, telling me what direction I should take.
So that certainly makes it a lot less work and a lot faster.
Definitely, right. And also the greatest thing is my response. I respond so much quicker. The conversation, because before with the hearing aid, for a split second, you have to listen.
Catch up.
Exactly. That's big time.
No, I mean here, I mean it's just flowing very well. Exactly. I mean, you're a much better conversationalist than I am, but it's going very well. So how about your family? Have they had any struggles with your hearing loss? I mean, your kids, your grandkids?
The grandkid came later. Before they was young, because my wife and I was hard, because every time she was in the other room.
She's hearing, I assume. Your wife is not? Oh, I don't know.
No, but it was me. If she was in the other room, I had to say, please come in the kitchen, please talk to me, let me see your face. Because I can hear people in the other room, but I can't understand what they're saying. Right. That's the difference. And it's amazing as you look at people, sometimes friends of mine, they were sitting and just laughing. They could have a conversation. They could listen to the conversation at the same time having a conversation with you. I didn't have that gift. But now with the implant, it makes it a lot easier because I hear different sounds that, for example, like many times I would leave the house, I would keep going in the kitchen to make sure I don't leave the faucet on. Mm-hmm. Now with this,
you know if it's running.
Those little things make the big difference.
So I really appreciate you being honest that, you know, there was fear around your cochlear implant. So can you share with the audience, though, as much as there's fear, what was the experience? Because I think, you know, as doctors, we kind of say, oh, it's this or that. But as a patient, somebody went through it. Obviously, you are the Incredible Hulk, but the Incredible Hulk actor feels the experience. So how was it for you?
My biggest fear was not the pain. My biggest fear, I was afraid to be doomed, meaning that if the operation was not successful, I'd be deaf for the rest of my life. That was the most terrifying thing in my life. But, you know, having a great doctor and being a candidate to reassure me, and then especially he explained to me, and then that made me much more comfortable. Don't get me wrong, after I had the surgery, you still got to wait 3 weeks to be activated. But during that period, it's always saying to yourself, the unknown is going to work. I was very positive about it. Because I said to myself, if I don't do this, if my hearing gets worse, because I know if you have word discrimination under 40%, you need to do something, because then, you know, then you're like leaving the boat, take the boat off the pier and just out in the middle of the ocean out of nowhere. So for me, I decided, why not take the plunge? Because my whole life I've been a fighter. And I said, I just knew that I'd be very successful because I had a good feeling with the doctor. They gave me a great test. Especially with being a candidate, they gave me the water test, the eye test. And I remember when I first listened with my left ear, the word discrimination was like 12, 13%. And I said to myself, you know, let's just go for it because I just want to have a better lifestyle.
Sure. And so after you got your cochlear implant, was there anything that was like a big surprise to you?
Clarity.
What that means and what that actually is.
Meaning, for example, people's voices and my own voice. That I sound so much different now compared to before, because my goal is that someday people say, Lou might have a slight speech impediment. Some people saying, well, he's speech impediment. Like Howard Stern one time, he said to me, I was having a conversation. He goes, oh, Lou Ferrigno, the speech impediment man. Yeah. That bothered me a lot. Yeah, I can imagine. I mean, come on. I mean, that's Howard Stern. But maybe he said it, but other people see me in some way. That's why in show business, a lot of times, when I would do a film, they had to loop my own line because the speech was not understandable to find words. So recently, when I filmed the series, I didn't have to loop once.
That's great.
Because I would have to think about the words as much now compared to before the implant.
That's great. So I know other people probably share their stories with you about their hearing loss. Mm-hmm. Okay. What's your favorite story somebody else has told you?
People came to me recently and say, so-and-so had a cochlear implant because of you, and they're very happy.
That's amazing, isn't it?
Yeah. You know what? Here's another factor. I was filming this series, and I remember I was in the makeup room. I was getting my hair fixed for the show because it had to be dark black. And I remember the hairdresser accidentally hit the cancel. Mm-hmm. And it fell down. It was hanging on the side of me. It looked like some kind of used earring. And the other actors were looking at me. Now, if this was 30 years ago, I would have probably just ripped it off. But I said, look at this. I said, this is my implant. Do you know that became such a wonderful conversation for 30 minutes? They were so intrigued by it, learn about it. Because when I did the Hulk, I was embarrassed to show my hearing aid. It's about rejection. So it's amazing how things change, especially technology. Because a lot of people now, they have a hearing loss, but they don't talk about it because especially older people, they get very discouraged, they get angry, they feel isolated, and they have a low social life.
Yeah, they're withdrawn from everything. Exactly. So Lou, who hears better, the bionic woman or the Incredible Hulk with a cochlear implant?
The Incredible Hulk. That's a good question.
I know Lindsay Wagner was good, but not as good as you, right?
Well, I'm a bionic because I have both knees, both hips replaced. So,
right. So you're bionic in that respect as well. That's great. So what advice would you give to somebody who's struggling with their hearing loss? What would you tell them?
I would say don't wait to get it done. If you're a candidate, go for it, because the fact that it's only going to hurt you, not just a loved one. It's you. You're the one, because you want to make yourself the best for other people. It's only going to hurt yourself. And it's like being reborn when you have it.
Yeah, that's great. And so what would you say is your biggest takeaway from your whole hearing journey? I mean, you've had, diagnosis, growing up with a hearing loss, speech issues, hearing aids, cochlear implants. Like, what's your biggest takeaway about all this?
I would say being the happiest I've ever been in my life with my hearing.
Right now?
Yes.
That's amazing. Yeah. And so, but even when and you did all these great things, you were, Mr. Olympian and the Incredible Hulk and all that stuff, and now you're the happiest.
Well, the nice thing is the fact that you could agree with me on this. Am I correct? With the implant, you would never lose any of that hearing compared to natural hearing. If the natural hearing declines as you get older, am I correct?
That's by and large true. Yes.
Yeah. The only thing that changes is the outer processor, as far as like the cosmetic part of it.
Right. And functionality, right? Like
exactly.
With the way you wear it and things like that.
Yeah.
Right. That's great. And so other professionals and people have taught you about hearing loss. What is the greatest things you've learned from professionals about, now you're in the kind of the hearing loss treatment community as a representative. What have you learned from them that's been a great lesson?
Over the years, I've always been one of the very few people that fought that had better hearing aids. I would push these people beyond they could be pushed to get more volume, better quality hearing, because I was never satisfied, and I kept pushing for better hearing. And what I've learned that the more you open the technology about these professionals, that there's hope out there. That's why having the implant, I'm glad at making that decision instead of just sitting around for another 10 or 15 years and debating.
Yeah. And so, one of the biggest problems we have in the hearing community is only 20% of people with hearing loss actually do anything about it. So it's really, unfortunately, not taken care of very well. And so can you just look in the camera and tell them to do something about it for us?
I would say it's not what you expect. It's not hard to expect. The surgery is very minimal. There's no stitches. You go home the same day. You get activated 3 weeks later. But my greatest thing to you is that don't wait. Don't sit back. Take action, because I'm 71. I should have done it when I was 60. And I can see, because I'm glad I had a chance to do it, because the fact that it was a dream of mine to have better hearing, because growing up my whole life, I wanted to have a small taste. I would just like to almost have close to great hearing. For example, like my own speech, because I spent many years studying phonetics to speak by the feeling of my tongue. But now with the implant, it's so much easier. So that's why you, for example, think about this, because if you have any fears, if you're a candidate to go for it, your life's going to be so much easier.
Yeah, it's kind of interesting, right? So for you, hearing aids were almost always part of what you had to do, right? So even working backward in the hearing loss spectrum, there are people who are even afraid to get hearing aids, right? To do anything about their hearing loss. Would you tell them the same? Go get your hearing loss treated?
Yes, exactly, because I wore hearing aids my whole life. And the thing is that hearing aids help you tremendously improve your hearing. But cochlear, in my opinion, gives you the clarity. The best hearing aid in the world is not going to give you what cochlear implant does. And someone told me that involved in the hearing industry, that he suggested I should get a cochlear implant because he can't do any more for me as far as my hearing. Some people like to have a hearing aid with the implant. It works like a marriage. It's a personal preference. But I really think that having just one, it's worth the effort, because it's like being reborn.
Lou, I ask everybody this. What's your favorite sound?
My favorite sound? Ocean. The ocean waves.
So you live near the ocean, I hope?
Yes. I hear the waves. I love to hear it. It's very relaxing.
Yeah, that's great. Well, Lou, this has been a great interview. I very much appreciate you sharing your journey and sharing your own personal takes on it. This has been great. Thank you so much for your time. I appreciate it.
Listen up. Treat your hearing loss. Take action now.
Thanks for tuning in to the Listen Up podcast. We'll see you again next time, and be sure to click subscribe to get updates on future episodes.